Welcome everyone. My name is Mary Marshall and Tom Pace is here with me. We're from the Rum River Art Center and we're really excited that you're all here with us today on this gorgeous day. We are going to be working on sunflowers and I'll show you in a few minutes my supplies as well as the photo images that we'll kind of get some inspiration from and look at a couple paintings today. So welcome, and we're just so happy that you're all here with us today. Okay. This is a photograph that I took up in northern Michigan, and this is one of the reference photos that I like to use. Sunflowers just kind of speak summer, right? They're just such a beautiful flower for this time of year. And so there's some different photo images that you could take a peek at. When you think about sunflowers, and I was reading about them that they grow like sometimes 10 feet tall. They turn their faces to the sun, which is kind of one of the ways they got their name, is thinking about turning the face of the flower to the sun. So here's another example. I wanted to show you this. This is a very famous painting, Vincent van Gogh, sunflowers. And he painted sunflowers a lot. So he really liked them, and he painted a ton of sunflower paintings over his career. So this is a great example. This is an oil painting. We're going to work in watercolor, but what I like about this, one of the things is the cool background, the cool blue background, and the warm yellows and oranges and burgundies that he used in the centers of his flower. I thought this was a nice photograph too. This is from a magazine, but I like how that one is just all by itself, standing up nice and tall. So let's get started on our painting, and we'll just get organized here for that. I'll move these out of the way. There's my reference photo. So where I usually start when I do the sunflower is I start with the circle, okay? So that's where you want to start. And when you look at the photo image, if you can see that, I like to go sort of measuring to see how wide is that center. Now it's going to vary from flower to flower, but the center is about that long according to my pencil. And the petals are a little bit shorter in length. So that can help me know that these petals need to be pretty large, really, but not as big as the center. So that helps me when I'm organizing my painting. Now, the one that I did here, what I use is a 140-pound cold press, and what I have here is arches. That's my favorite, but there are all kinds of watercolor paper that you can use. Strathmore is a great one. Cansen's pretty good. So when we're working in watercolor, we want to draw first very lightly. So I've got just a HB pencil, which is a middle of the road pencil, and I like to use a kneaded eraser. The brush that I'm going to use today, excuse me, is a Princeton number 10 round. So this is a good all-purpose brush. I've been using it all summer, really. It's been just very versatile, so I like that. All right, so let's just talk about how you could start drawing this. So I'm drawing on a piece of paper with a marker just so that you can see it. I'll do it 2 times, and you want to get it ready, get your watercolor paper ready, and think about where you want to have your flower on the paper. Now this is kind of centered in the middle, but you can offset it a tad, which is always nice composition. So I start with my circle, and you can think about having some of it, like in this painting, some of it ended up going off the page, and that's okay. A lot of it went off the page actually. So just think about how you can have it organized so that you have room for the petals, and if you want to have leaves, okay? So I have my circle, and what I usually do is I start with the top one. This is called a radial design. It's a design in the round, and these flowers are called rays, so they're sort of set up like a daisy. So I've got my center, and then I think north, south, west, and east. And so I put my first petals in that order. When I put them like that, it helps prevent it from kind of turning into a pinwheel. So I do that first, and then I'm going to put one here. And if you're someone who's not comfortable drawing, really all these are curved lines that are meeting at the top, okay? So this is how I start this. And I can be looking at a photograph, which I am, but you can get yours organized. Now that one's going to have to go where I wrote, but that's okay. So we've got these set up and they're not looking like a pinwheel. That's the trick. So now I can fill in here, and some might overlap or go behind other petals. Okay. There's my sunflower. Now I didn't add a stem yet. I could add a stem and kind of have it go this way, which would be fine. So that would be an idea, you know, and then you can get a stem up here. And these leaves are actually a little more zigzaggy, so I need to fix that. Okay. So there's one way to do it. So this one's on another piece of paper. Again, I'm organizing that center first. You know, don't worry if your circle's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. And again, I'm starting here. And I already drew this, so I'm just outlining it for you so you can see it. Okay, so if I do these guys first, it's just a lot easier. And then I can add my other petals. Here's another one, just to give you an idea. Let's get started. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the petals first, and then I'm going to do the center. So here I have my petals, and if I want to think about doing petals that are next to each other, when I paint them with watercolor, they're going to run together. The color is going to mingle with the color that's next to it. So it might be a good idea just to skip around a little bit. So I'm going to do a technique that I call wet and wet. It's a technique where we get the paper a bit damp first. I'm going to start up here at my top, it's got a little bit of blue on there, my top petal. So I want to give this a bit of time, the water, to settle in to the fibers of the paint, or the fibers of the paper. So it soaks in just a bit before I apply the paint, okay? So I'm going to start with my yellow, and I have the lemon yellow here, and I'll show you what I've mixed up. For those of you who have been painting for a while, you know that these paints here that I have, they're dry right now, and they'll keep over time, not forever and ever, but they'll keep. And so all I have to do is get them wet, okay? I just squirted some of these out at home to be ready, but I can also think about how much water I want to add. So the more water that I add to this, the lighter in value the paint will be, okay? So we don't want too much paint so that it's really, really thick. We're going to do what we call a wash. So a wash just means a layer of paint. I can also here, so I've got my lemon yellow, I can also grab some of this Hansa yellow, which is a much warmer yellow. I don't know if you can see that, see the difference. And I can make some mixtures here right on my palette. So we're allowing this paint to mix on the watercolor paper, but we're also having mixtures that can be made on my tray or your mixing tray, whatever you have. A plate works just fine, to see what colors that I'm going to end up with. So here's some mixtures that I've made. This is a real pretty peach color. put it up a little higher if you can see that. And that has a little bit of rose, permanent rose with my Hansa yellow. Okay, there's another mixture. Here's a nice, see how the difference is that you can get so many beautiful colors. And here's just the lemon yellow. Okay, so to make a bit of orange, just take some red, mix it in. Or if you have orange on your palette, just use that orange. That's great. So there's some nice orange. So more water. The more water you use, the lighter the value. The more paint you use, the thicker the value, or the darker the value, excuse me. Okay? I'm going to go in with my yellow here and do a little bit of a wash right in here. So you can start and bring your brush along the edge. I like to leave a little bit of white so I don't fill the whole thing in completely. And then I can just kind of move that paint along here. And then while it's wet, I can touch it in different spots along the edge maybe, or towards the center with different colors that I've mixed up. Okay, I'll hold it up. So that's kind of a nice little petal right there. Could add a little more pink. So these colors are mingling right on the paper. If I want to get a little more yellow, whoops. A little more yellow, I can pop that in here too. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. Okay, so now I'm going to scoot over to another petal, and I'm going to do the same process all the way as I go around here. If you get some paint in a spot where you don't want it, so let's say I want to move some of this paint right here, I've got my brush clean and fairly dry, and I can actually pull this up. In other words, I'm taking it from the paper and it's ending up on my brush because it's relatively clean. So I actually did some shading in a way with this particular petal and remove some of the pigment that I had there. I could do it here as well. And I'm using the paint that's there and moving it along the petal so that it does create that cool design. Okay. All right. So another thing I want to show you is how to do what we call softening an edge. Okay, so if you can see right here, I've painted this petal, which is basically behind that one. It's darker, but right along here, I've got an edge. I've got a pretty strong edge. So one thing that I can do with that is I can take some clean water and just go right alongside it with my clean water, and it will soften that edge and blend it nicely. Okay. So the center on this particular photo image is quite dark, right? The other photo that I had, the center is not quite so dark. So like I said, all these different varieties, you can think about how you want yours to look. They're very textural. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to lay down an initial wash of several colors, and then I'm going to do some dotting of darker color into the wash, dots. And then later I can go back and get more detail. So this needs to be dry before you do that. And I'm using clean water, relatively clean water in here to get this wet. Remember, you don't have to fill in the whole thing. Don't worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to start in with, after I've dampened it a bit, I'm going to start in with my color. So find the green that you like, and it's a good thing I tried it before I put it on my paper, right? So I like to check it out first. And you can always take a little bit of yellow and mix that in with your green too. That warms it up a bit. So I'm just going to start this here and keep it pretty simple. If we want to add more details on something that I've already painted, in other words, these petals here are dry, so I can go back to a petal or more, or all of them actually if you wanted to, and this one's dry, and just add some detail, line work if you want to. So I'm just sort of drawing with my brush here very lightly, and then I'm going to soften away along the side of the brush strokes that I've made. Okay, so just adds a little bit more definition if you're going for that look. And so I'm just making some marks like this with my brush. Okay, and you'd want the watercolor paper, your painting to be dry before you attempt to do anything like this. Okay, so it's kind of fun. And I didn't wet it again, but I could. I could re-wet this and add more color that way, or I can work on a dry surface. This needs to be dry before I would add a background. And what I would say is, again, think about your color, make some swatches on your scrap paper and see what you think would look pretty or look nice or that would make you happy. Okay, so I know that this is cobalt blue. I know that would look nice. This is ultramarine blue. It's a little different. And I know that would look nice too. And then I also have another blue, which is a little different. I dampen it first. That's the key. And remember that I don't have to cover the whole thing. It doesn't have to be super dark. It could be dark, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a very light wash. So I'm cutting in here with my clean water. And I suppose a bigger brush would help, wouldn't it? I could get it done quickly. So, but I'm not going everywhere. I do want to go in the corners. Okay, so I'm just going to do this edge right up here just to show you. Same technique that I want this water to seep in and not be standing up as a puddle.